On this path of atonement, our pilgrims are changing gears, changing consciousness, as we have said, arriving at new, more evolved ways of being as they climb to the mountain's peak. And this is as true for Virgil as it is for Dante, some of the commentators suggest, although it is still a heretical notion for some, certain as they are that the faithful pre-Christian guide must be returned to limbo when Beatrice replaces him in Canto 30 ahead. I confess to favouring the idea that Virgil is also experiencing his own deeply transformational journey alongside Dante that will eventually lead to his salvation. Both are seeing through different eyes, understanding with more compassionate hearts as they ascend, literally and symbolically becoming lighter as each new wisdom dawns. In the Paradiso, Dante will fly through the spheres with his beloved Beatrice, but for now, both poets must turn their attention to the remaining terraces ahead. As they approach the fourth terrace, where the wrathful are being purged, Dante falls into a deep trance of ecstasy, in which he begins to have visions that convey the essence of gentleness, the virtue, and the whip of the third terrace. The first of these visions recalls the sorrowful search of Mary and Joseph for the young Jesus, whom they feared lost in Jerusalem. They had every reason to be angry with him, for he had not told them where he was going. But Mary, upon discovering him, shows gentleness and restraint. The second vision recalls the Greek tale of a young man who offended the mother of a girl he wished to marry by publicly embracing her. The mother calls straight away for his execution, but the father, renowned for his soft speech, was more lenient. "What shall we do to those who wish harm to us?" he soothed his wife, "if we condemn him who loves us?" Finally, Dante recalls the biblical scene of the stoning of St. Stephen. "I saw people blazing with the fire of wrath," he tells us, "killing a youth with stones, and calling continually and loudly to each other, 'Kill him, kill him.' And I saw him sinking to the ground in death, which already weighed him down. But he made of his eyes all the while gateways to heaven, praying to the Lord on high in such torment with that look that unlocks pity, of forgiveness toward his persecutors." Afterwards, Dante is eager to tell Virgil what he has seen, but Virgil, telepathically, already knows. "If you had 100 masks on your face," he tells him, "your thoughts, however slight, would not be hidden from me. What you saw was to prevent you having an excuse for not opening your heart to the waters of peace that are poured from the eternal fountain." As the poets hasten on, dark clouds begin to swirl ominously around them. Dante clings to Virgil in fear, for the atmosphere is wretched. Little by little, he tells us, a smoke, dark as night, moved toward us, and there was no space to escape it. This stole away our sight and the clean air. The souls of the wrathful here stumble about within the darkness, clearly struggling to see like Dante. Only Virgil seems able to find a path through this darkness that so perfectly seems to symbolize the anger that clouded the minds of the wrathful and blinded them in life. Then, as now, they could not see each other clearly, nor could they themselves be seen, and this is the great danger of wrath. It is a kind of madness that eclipses all powers of reason, says Giuseppe Mazzotta in his Yale lectures on these scenes. When caught in its enthrall, all manner of misjudgment becomes possible. The other is dehumanized in a sense, reduced to a mere embodiment of one's crooked projection. But how to free oneself from the clutches of such passion, this is the question facing the penitents here. Dante then hears the souls chanting Agnus Dei, a prayer from the canon of the Mass. Lamb of God, who takest away the sins of the world, have mercy on us. Lamb of God, who takest away the sins of the world, grant us peace. And in this way, Virgil explains, the tight knots of the wrath and anger that constricted their hearts in life were gradually loosened. The hope is that the more these souls align with the frequency of the prayer, the more they will be set free. As they chant, Dante tells us, their voices fall into harmony with one another, something they had failed to do in life. One of the souls then addresses Dante directly. He is Marco Lombardo, a man of great courtesy, generosity, and nobility of mind, though of a peppery temper, writes Dorothy Sayers in her commentary, and this is the reason for his positioning here. He offers to accompany the poets, and as they walk on together, their conversation falls to the topics of determinism, free will, and the temporal power of the Church. He will walk alongside them until they reach the end of the terrace. During the ensuing conversation, during which Dante clings to Virgil's cloak so as not to lose sight of him in the dense clouds, the notion of free will becomes established. Marco Lombardo, say some of the commentators, becomes the mouthpiece for Dante the poet's own thoughts on these matters. By the end of their walk, the notion of pure astrological determinism will have been fully put to bed. We might very well be influenced by the movements of the celestial bodies, but we are not wholly at their mercy, so to speak. Instead, the notion that people are where they are meant to be as a result of choices, conscious or otherwise, made along the way, is settled upon. The controversial idea that souls are born innocent rather than stained with original sin is mooted here too. From his hands, who loves her deeply before she exists, issues the soul in simplicity, like a little child playing in laughter and in tears, suggests Marco, and she knows nothing but that, sprung from a joyful Maker, she willingly turns toward what delights her. That the soul requires guidance is uncontested, but Marco, again almost certainly acting as a mouthpiece for Dante the writer, lacks trust in the ability of the Church to provide what is needed, partly because of the sullying that has occurred as a result of the church dominion in both temporal and spiritual matters, a coupling vehemently opposed by Dante. Now, interestingly, and worthy of note, is that these few canti, 16, 17 and 18, fall midpoint in the Commedia. What is said here, in the run-up to the centre, is deeply significant, reflecting some of Dante's core ideas, which clearly stand outside official church doctrine, even today. Up ahead, Virgil will develop the theme of free will, but first the poets must ascend to the next terrace. In the distance, Dante sees the brightness of the angel of meekness approaching, his radiance penetrating the darkness, indicating they are nearing the end of the smoke cloud from which Marco cannot emerge until his purgation is complete. God be with you, he says, since I come with you no further. The angel is there, and I must go before he sees me. Addressing the reader directly then, Dante describes their emergence from the clouds. Remember, reader, if you've ever been caught in the mountains when a mist came on, through which you peered as moles peer through the skin, how, when the thick, damp vapours have begun to lift, there steals upon you, faintly winking through thin-drawn veils, the pale disk of the sun. And little trouble then you'll have in thinking just how things looked to me when first I spied the sun again, which was now near to sinking. Thus, with my leader, stride for trusty stride, forth from such clouds I came to the bright ray, though from the shore below all light had died. And as they emerge from the darkness, Dante experiences 3 visions of wrath that briefly reveal the bridle of this terrace. The first recalls the mythic tale of Procne, a young woman who in a fit of vengeful passion killed and fed her infant son to her husband, who had raped her young sister Philomena. The second is from the biblical tale of Haman in the book of Esther, who ruthlessly ordered the murder of all the Jews in the kingdom on account of a slight against his prowess. And the third, from Virgil's own Aeneid, the tale of Queen Amata's rageful suicide that left her poor daughter needlessly bereft of a mother. I turned my steps with Virgil, Dante then tells us, toward a stairway, and as soon as I was on the first step, I felt something like the touch of a wing, and my face was fanned, and I heard someone say, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall inherit the earth." The stars begin to appear as the poets climb the stairs to the next terrace. It is the end of the second day on the mountain. Dante notices how tired he is and how steep the climb. They stop to rest on the cusp of the 4th terrace, for by rule of the mountain they are not permitted to travel by night. "My sweet father," he asks of the terrace ahead, "say what offence is purged in this circle, where we are." Virgil explains it is the terrace of the slothful, where the souls of those deficient in zeal the virtue to be attained here, are purged. Sloth, writes Dorothy Sayers, is not merely idleness of mind or laziness of body. It is that whole poisoning of the will, beginning with indifference and an attitude of "I couldn't care less," that extends to the deliberate refusal of joy and culminates in morbid introspection and despair. Love, of course, which empowers the soul to act, is clearly the antidote to sloth, and it is to love, amore, as the Italians say, that the poem now turns. But if you wish to understand more deeply, Virgil tells Dante, turn your mind on me, and you will gather some good fruit from our delay. Now, Canto 17, where we are now, is the exact midpoint of the entire Commedia, and it's no coincidence that this is where Virgil will deliver his famous discourse on love, the central theme of the poem, from first to last, says Helen Luke, this great exploration of love and love's dark shadow, as we said at the very start. Yet it's so easy to get lost in all the detail of this epic journey and forget that love is at the heart of it. Now, at midpoint, Dante asserts love's primacy in no uncertain terms. Building upon their discussion with Marco Lombardo about free will and interweaving church doctrine on the 7 deadly sins with certain Aristotelian notions concerning the need to balance the opposites of the psyche to avoid the dangers of blinkered, out-of-control extremes, notions that in Dante's day were gradually being integrated from the classical world. Virgil settles down to unpack these complexities in as much detail as his logic will permit. Beyond this point, he counsels Dante, wait only for Beatrice, since it is a question of faith. First, he explains the intricate relationship between each sin and its corresponding virtue in terms of perverted, deficient, or excessive love. The natural love is always free of error, he says, but the rational may err because of an evil objective, or because of too much or too little energy. The desire to be loved can cause us all to fall, he implies, and turn our initially innocent desires to bad ends, as it were. The proud, he says, are those who hope to excel through their neighbour's downfall. The envious, those who fear to lose power, influence, fame, or honour, because another is preferred. The wrathful are those so ashamed because of injury that they become eager for revenge. On the remaining terraces, he tells Dante, they will encounter souls whose lives have been misguided by insufficient and excessive love, and he encourages Dante to make his own observations in the light of what he has heard. The night deepens, but Dante wants to understand more, and he presses Virgil to continue. I pray you, gentle father dear, to teach me what love is. You have reduced to love both each good and its opposite. Virgil then develops the notion of the soul's innocence at birth, raised with Marco Lombardo in Canto 16. The spirit that is created ready for love, he begins, is moved by everything pleasing as soon as it is stirred into action by pleasure. But this can lead directly to the kinds of problems suffered by those encountered thus far on the mountain, as well as those ahead. Virgil explains just how this occurs in a surprisingly modern and psychological way. Your sensory faculties take an impression from real objects and unfold it inside you, he says, so that the spirit turns toward those objects. The mind, thus captured, enters into desire and never rests until the object of its love gives it joy. Now Mark Vernon, who we have mentioned before, compares Virgil's pronouncements here to the psychological notion of introjection from modern object relations theory. Early experiences, good or ill, are believed to be deeply internalized and later triggered when the introjected object is encountered in real life. One mistakenly projects the introjected experience onto the newly encountered person in a wholly inaccurate way, thoroughly losing sight of the actual person in the process. Notions of the mind captured in this way dovetail beautifully into a resumption of the earlier discourse on free will, the great gift from God explored throughout, a gift that can lift humankind beyond the realms of victimhood, conferring freedom to act, to choose, and to chart one's course. Here, on the mountain, courtesy of the divine, souls have the opportunity to bring the light of consciousness to bear upon these deeply unconscious patterns, to recalibrate, as it were, as far as reason will allow, and to liberate themselves from the dark enchantments that bind them. The night passes, the moon rises up, and Virgil at last falls silent. His entire discourse has been delivered in the lyrical style of courtly love poetry, the genre that so influenced Dante as a young man, a genre, however, that he sought to go beyond. He wished to understand love more fully. Do you remember? And this was the intention he set himself at the end of his La Vita Nuova. Now, at midpoint in his Commedia, he has finally established that passion, in any of its guises, is not an irresistible force, and in so doing, he has overturned the fundamental assumption of the genre. Come upon aright, with insight, courtesy of free will. Love is a force that can set the soul on its true course toward heaven's highest heights.